Hello guys, welcome back to Science Free. In our last lesson, we learned how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. In today's lesson, we will go through how to solve quadratic equations by completing the square. And bear in mind guys that this method works for all quadratic equations. For this equation, we have x squared minus 8x minus 12 equals 0. The first step is to move over the third term behind 0 after the equal sign. The third term is a negative 12. Based on the transposition rule, moving over a number behind the equal sign will cause the sign to change. So minus 12 will become a positive 12 after moving it over. And 0 plus 12 gives 12. Since the 12 is being moved over to the right, we want to rewrite the equation with x squared minus 8x equals 12. Next, we want to write back the first and second terms, which are x squared minus 8x. We want to now add the value of the middle constant, which is negative 8, and divide it into 2. Notice we only take the value of the middle term to add, without writing the constant x. The next step is to place a bracket around the 8 divided into 2 and squared. Remember the equation is equal 12, so we make this equation below equals 12. We again need to write the value for the middle constant behind 12 to plus it with it. The value for the middle constant is negative 8x, we write it, then divide it into 2. We now place a bracket around negative 8, divide into 2, then square it. We want to work out the value of negative 8 divides into 2. But first, we rewrite the x squared term along with negative 8x. Negative 8 divides into 2 gives negative 4. Notice there is a plus sign here. So we bring it back down to add to the value of negative 8 divides into negative 4 squared. On the right-hand side, we want to write back 12, along with the plus sign, to add with the value of negative 8 divides into 2. Dividing negative 8 into 2 on the right-hand side, we get 4. And we just squared the answer, which is the negative 4. We now have to write x without squaring, and 4 in brackets. The sign after the x squared is a negative sign, so we place it between x and 4. And then we squared the bracket. We squared the bracket to represent the squared and 4 squared. Negative 4 is being raised to the power of 2, which means negative 4 will be multiplying by itself 2 times. Negative times negative gives positive. So negative 4 times negative 4 equals 16. 12 plus the value of negative 4, which is 16 squared, equals 28. To now transpose to find x, we notice that the bracket is being raised to 2. And the opposite of squaring is to carry a square root. And we do that on both sides of the equation. But on the right-hand side, we also place a plus and minus sign. This is because we will get two values for x, when we either minus from the square root value, or add the value of the square root. On the left-hand side, the square will eradicate both itself and the square root sign, and we will be left with only x minus 4. The square root of 28 could be simplified further to 2 times the square root of 7. Because the square root of 4 times the square root of 7 equals the square root of 28. And because the square root of 4 is simplified to 2. So we write it as 2 times the square root of 7. We now want to move over the negative 4 behind the equal sign to transpose for x on the left-hand side. The 4 was negative, but when it is moved over it will become positive. Remember we have a plus and minus sign in front of the square root. We can add 4 to find the value of x, and we can subtract 4 to find the other value of x. 4 plus 2 is equal to 6. 4 minus 2 equals 2. So for this quadratic equation, x could be 6 times the square root of 7, and x could also be 2 times the square root of 7. For this quadratic equation, the first step is that we should again apply the transposition rule by moving over the last term, which is positive 8, behind the 0 after the equal sign. This positive 8 will become negative after it is being moved over across the equal sign. which means the new equation will become 9x squared minus 10x equals -8. To solve a quadratic equation that does not have its first term being just 1, we first need to make the value of that first x squared term equals 1. To achieve that, we divide the value for the first term into itself, which will cancel to give 1. But also, we have to divide the values for all the constants into that number. 9 divides into 9 gives 1. 10 and -8 cannot be divided into 9 without giving decimals, so we leave them as they are. We can now work with this equation, since the first term is being reduced to a 1x squared term. We can now write x squared minus 10x over 9. And we want to write back the equal sign, and place -8 over 9. The middle term value, which is 10x divided into 9, we want to ignore the constant x, and divide that fraction into 2. We can divide into 2 or we can multiply the fraction by half. Dividing 10 over 9 into 2 gives 5 over 9. So we write back the x squared term minus 5x over 9. And we plus it with 5 over 9, without the x, and then place a bracket and square it. We write back down the equal sign along with -8 over 9. We now place a plus sign behind, and add it with the fraction 5 over 9 squared. Let us first focus on solving the fraction to the left. We can first work out the bracket. 5 squared means 5 multiplied by itself 2 times. 5 times 5 gives 25. 9 times 9 equals 81. We get a fraction of 25 over 81 from the 5 squared over 9. We can now write back this entire fraction to work it out. The LCM of 9 and 81 is just 81. 81 divides into 9 gives 9. And 9 times -8 gives -72. 81 divides into 81 goes 1 time, 1 times 25 gives 25. We carry down the plus sign, to add -72 plus 25, we got -47. And we place that over 81. The x squared term, along with the minus sign, should now go in a bracket with 5 over 9 squared. We place the square outside the bracket, because everything in brackets will then be raised to that power as they were raised to outside the bracket. The calculation of this fraction on the right-hand side should now bring down. We want to get rid of the squared bracket on the left-hand side, so we bring a square root sign, because the square root will cancel the square. And we then place a plus and minus sign in front of the fraction to the right, then square it also. We need to get rid of the 5 over 9 by moving it over to the right-hand side, leaving only x on one side. -47 is not a perfectly squared number, so we can just leave it as it is. The square root of 81 is 9, so that's simplified to the square root of -47 over 9 to the right. Because both denominators are 9, we can write 5 plus or minus the square root of 47 over 9. Let's work this one out. Moving over +4 to the right will then become negative. 0 from 4 leaves 4. We want to rewrite the equation with -3x minus 10x equals -4. We divide -3 into itself to give just the x squared term to work with. We have to also divide the other constants into -3. So -3 divides into 3 leaves 1x. -10x cannot be divided into -3 without leaving a remainder. But the negative signs will cancel each other to give positive. Also on the right-hand side of the equation, -4 cannot be divided into -3 without leaving a remainder, but the negative signs will then be cancelled, and the numerator and denominator will become positive. The next step is to divide 10 over 3 into 2. We can place 2 over 1. When dividing decimals, the fraction on the right should always interchange, and the division sign should change from division to multiplication. 10 cannot be divided into 3 without giving decimals. If we divide 2 into 1, we will get back the same answer of 2. And also if we divide 3 into 1, we will get back 3. But we can cross divide 10 into 2. 2 into itself goes 1 time. 10 divides into 2, gives 5. We multiply 5 by 1, we get 5. And 3 times 1 gives 3. so the answer is 5 over 3. We write back the x squared term, and plus 10x over 3. And plus it with 5 over 3. And we place a bracket then square. And then make the equation equal to 4 over 3. We also place a plus sign after the fraction, and add it with 5 over 3. We place x squared along with the plus sign here, and 5 over 3 in brackets. We now place an exponent 2, for everything in the bracket, to be raised back to a power of 2. Simplifying the fraction in brackets to the right, we get 25 for the numerator, because 5 squared equals 25. And for the denominator, we would then get a value of 9, because 3 squared equals 9. We can now add the fractions together. The LCM of 3 and 9 is 9. 9 divides into 3 goes 3 times. 3 multiplied by 4 gives 12. 9 divides into 9 goes 1 time. 1 times 25 gives 25. 12 plus 25 equals 37, and we place 37 over 9. We want to now get rid of the square term, so we place a square root over it. Both terms will then cancel. We also place a square root over the term to the right, along with a plus and minus sign. The square root of 9 is 3, that's how we got this 3 here. 37 is not a perfectly squared number, so we can leave it as it is. We want to now move the fraction 5 over 3 to the right. The fraction will change from positive to negative when it is being moved over. Because the fractions share the same denominator, we can write negative 5 times the square root of 37 over 3. Thank you for watching, guys, and if you haven't, please remember to subscribe, as we upload every week.